going, everybody? Welcome to General Hospital Envy, my GH after show. I'm so sorry that I'm coming at y'all so late tonight, but let's get into it. The Webbers are certainly having an interesting week. I mean, between the stuff going on at Elizabeth's house and, of course, the sex tape drama. So let's discuss. At the start of this week, Elizabeth and Portia were actually butting heads at work. Portia's obviously been very distracted by what's going on with Trina, and she forgot to do something important that prevents Elizabeth from continuing to be able to do her job properly, and Elizabeth called her out on it, and Portia snapped back, but they did hash it out, so that's good. Let me just quickly go off of the Webbers for just a split second and talk about how Portia has been on edge the whole week. She even accused Jordan of not doing her job properly, just in spite of her because of her leftover feelings for Curtis. Obviously, we know that Jordan doesn't think that Trina did this, and she had to, in a roundabout way, kind of mention that to Portia just to ease her mind a little bit, because she is the police commissioner. At the end of the day, she can't talk about an ongoing investigation, but she did speak to Trina's character and said that she is a good girl with very good morals. So hopefully that eased Portia's conscience a little bit. But back to Elizabeth. You would think that with Chase living in Elizabeth's house right now and all the security cameras being set up, that we'd be a little bit closer to figuring out what's going on in that house. But nope. One night while Elizabeth was sleeping, Aiden shows up with his Ouija board and asks Chase if he would help him use it for a school project. Chase humors him for a little bit, but then stops it short of the seance itself and sends him back to Laura's house, where of course Aiden and Jake are staying to avoid the danger. Not long after that, Chase hears a noise in the house and he goes to investigate it, and the next thing we know, he is on the floor unconscious. The next day, everyone looks at the security footage, but unfortunately the file was corrupted, because of course it was. Clearly whoever's doing this must be good with computers. Where is Spinelli when you need him? God forbid the show does anything to move the storyline along. Anyway, another thing that happened while Elizabeth was sleeping was that Cam was arrested and thrown in jail. Let's discuss why. As you guys know, Cameron was less than thrilled that Spencer let him in on his plan to take down Esme, because it puts Cameron in an awkward position with Joss and Trina, and when Joss and Trina are trashing Spencer, Cameron feels like he has to go jump on Spencer's defense, which of course confuses Joss and Trina. Cameron was actually about to come clean to Joss and Trina as to what was going on, but then of course Spencer walked in and prevented him from doing so, and he did it in such a way that insulted Jocelyn, so Cameron threw a punch at him, and of course Rory, the new cop, happened to be there at the time. Spencer shows up and then he punches the cop accidentally, but watch the episode for yourselves and let me know if you think it was an accident. Suffice to say, both guys got arrested, and Cameron's one phone call was to Finn, and Spencer's of course was to Laura, the mayor of Port Charles of course, and his grandmother. Rory was definitely surprised that the boys that he arrested happened to be the grandsons of the mayor of Port Charles. His reaction was pretty funny. Spencer decided to not press charges against Cameron, and Rory decided not to press charges against Spencer, so both boys were let go. There were definitely some funny scenes of Spencer trying to apologize to Rory and Laura trying to be in the background whenever he would say something stupid and just be like, no. Like, you know, such a grandmotherly thing to do. Even a motherly thing to do. Laura's more like a mom. Lord knows that Spencer boy needs a mom figure, and obviously it's not going to be Ava anytime soon. This situation was a good reminder that Spencer could easily go back to jail because he just got out. He hasn't even done his, competence yet with Ava, or whatever he's going to decide to do now. But obviously, if Spencer goes to jail, then his plan to bring Esme down isn't going to work. And speaking of Esme, this girl, I swear to God, she is trying to make the moves on Nicholas. She grabs his hand and gets him to put it on her face to caress it, and he's just being very what's the word I'm looking for? He's just kind of looking at her huh. I honestly think that Nicholas is playing her and probably has the same plan that Spencer has in trying to have Esme trust him enough to come clean about what she's done to Trina. If this father-son duo would actually just communicate with each other, they would probably be able to bring her down no problem. These Cassadine men, I swear to God, so frustrating. Moving on, the Quartermaine sans Monica officially welcomed Leo into the family. The adoption for Leo has now gone through, and Leo is officially a Quartermaine. Monica couldn't be there because she had another medical conference to go to, like she always does. I don't even know how long the list is of all the milestones Monica has missed because she had to go to a medical conference over the years. Dozens and dozens at this point. Anyway, Leo did have a bit of an episode during the celebration. Olivia and Ned wanted him to recite, I think, like a poem or something, and he got a bit scared and stormed off. And I don't know if it was because of the autism or if it was because of stage fright. Brooklyn wanted to console him. I don't even know if she succeeded. I was kind of tuning in and out at that point. She was mostly upset that Chase wasn't there, but of course Chase was in the hospital because he had a concussion, but he does show up later and, you know, brings her flowers. What a sweetheart. Maybe Chase can bring Leo out of his shell. I wonder if he'll actually do that. Britt has definitely had an interesting week this week. She had to try and convince Brad that working at GH wasn't the move because obviously she doesn't want what Selena has over her head to come out, and to keep that a secret, she has to convince Brad to work for her instead. And she actually manages to convince him to do so. On top of that, Britt decides to go on a date with one of her 6 matches from that dating app, and I'm pretty convinced that Spinelli made that dating app. Here's why I think this. Spinelli and Maxie were at the Savoy, and Maxie was talking about how Britt was on a date from that dating app, and Spinelli convinced her that they should go and spy on her. I was getting classic Spixie shenanigan vibes, y'all. Now, Britt's date was supposed to be at the Port Charles Grill, but he ended up being a no-show. Drew happened to be there with an executive coach who happens to be played by Cameron Matheson's real-life wife. I think it was only just a small cameo role. I don't think it's gonna go anywhere really, but we'll see. After that, Drew actually hangs out with Britt, and the two of them catch up and get along quite well, and Maxie actually thinks that Drew was the actual date, and they're like, no. Britt talks about how the dating app was a dud, and Spinelli just jumps to the defense of the algorithms of the app. And I'm like, oh yeah, he totally made this app. It's kind of a random story for Spinelli to have, but I'm at least hoping that we get some more Spixie shenanigans out of it, because I enjoy them so much still. I caught a glimpse of the classic Maxie in those scenes, so I was excited. Alright, let's talk about Curtis and Selena. Now, as you guys know, Curtis agreed to let her use the back room of the Savoy in exchange that she brings him Marshall's witness protection records. And she goes there and tries to get them. However, there is no witness protection records for him because he was never in witness protection. But regardless, Curtis still has to pay up what he owes her. Another part of their deal entailed Selena getting her hands on Marshall's criminal records as well, and she is willing to give that to him, but only after her first game at the Savoy, and she actually follows through with it the next morning. Now, unfortunately for Curtis, Marshall was getting ready to leave town because he realized that since Drew didn't follow up on the job offer that he gave him, that it meant that Curtis and Drew obviously got what they wanted out of the situation, and of course that rubbed Marshall the wrong way, and he was ready to leave town. Both Epiphany and Trina on separate days tried to convince Marshall to stay, and Marshall was already on the docks getting ready to go when he was talking to Trina. They had actually some really sweet scenes together when she was saying goodbye to him, but Trina does go over to Curtis and lets him know that Marshall is about to leave, and so Curtis goes over to the docks with that file, and he's about to confront him on it. Hopefully this is the week that we finally learn exactly what Marshall did that was so dangerous. Speaking of dangerous, we get to see the old Sonny Corinthos come back a little bit this week. He actually got those 2 punks that tried to rob the Charlie's Pub out of jail so that he could have his own revenge on them. We see that he has one of the guys in the trunk of a car, and he mentions that he'll be by his other partner very soon. They don't really say what Sonny did, but I feel like they heavily imply that he might be taking a trip to the Pine Barrens. It's so stupid. Like, Sonny and Nina were at the Port Charles Grill, and he gets the phone call about the guy in the trunk and like leaves Nina hanging, and then just like comes back, and she's just there like waiting, like, oh, it's fine. And it doesn't seem to register with her what he may have done. She's sitting there like, you don't need to keep secrets from me. I know the real you, whether that's Mike or Sonny Corinthos. And I'm like, girl, stop. You don't know shit, Nina. Valentine Cassadine is back in town after his secret mission to frame Jennifer Smith for stealing the Ice Princess. And of course, he's covering his ass. It turns out that whatever Victor has planned for the Cassadine family, Valentine is definitely on board with it. and is willing to do whatever it takes to solidify his family's power. Apparently, Valentine also sent Charlotte to boarding school to avoid this whole mess. Anna and Felicia debrief Robert and Laura on the French Polynesia situation, and they talk about how Jennifer Smith was arrested and that the WSB thinks the case is closed. However, Laura doesn't think that Jennifer is capable of killing Luke, but she does think it's very Cassadine to frame someone in that kind of way. Robert thinks that Anna should use her relationship with Valentine to convince him to work against his father, but that's going to be kind of hard to do when he is working with his father. Something tells me this isn't going to bode well for Valentine and Anna's new flourishing relationship. Alright, finally, let's talk about Harmony and the messy state that she has gotten herself into this week. As you guys know, she killed Brendan to keep him quiet about the fact that she killed his brother Neil. Sure enough, Brendan's body washes up right in front of Alexis on the pier, and of course, she calls the police not knowing it was actually him yet, because he's face down in the water. But when Jordan identifies him, she goes into shock to realize that it's him, and of course, she says that she's seen him recently, and that he was in debt and asked for money, and that they didn't really get along well, and of course, Alexis was like, oh shit, I probably look guilty. Girl, if you only knew. Now, I'm not exactly sure how, but at some point, apparently, Harmony managed to get her hands on Brendan's key card for his room at the Metro Court, and she sneaks into his room and steals the files that he had of Neil's. She puts them in her purse and decides to get absolutely hammered at the Metro Court restaurant, where Alexis eventually finds her. Sam and Carly see her in a drunken state as well. Alexis drives her home, and Carly agrees to drive Harmony's car back to Alexis's house a little bit later. Harmony is still very drunk at Alexis's house, and when Carly shows up, she actually mentions to Carly that Willow isn't family, or she says it, and of course, that just confuses Carly. We don't really get a follow-up from that, but the next morning when she is more sober, Alexis asks her what had her so scared and in that state last night, and she comes up with an excuse that it has to do with the whole Nina versus Willow and Michael thing. Alexis reveals to Harmony that the article is going to be in The Invader, and Harmony gets angry and says that she needs to kill the story because she owes her. Alexis doesn't think it's right that she asks her to do that, and she leaves the house to go to work, and then Harmony decides to take the files and tries to burn them in Alexis's fireplace. But as she was about to, Carly shows up and walks in the house and sees her about to light the matches onto those files. I don't know if Carly saw the files, but they are in clear view, so I think she's going to be a little bit suspicious. Carly is definitely going to figure out that Nina is actually Willow's mom, and I wonder what she's going to do with that information. Furthermore, I wonder if Harmony's going to try to kill Carly if she finds out the information. I'm actually really intrigued to see where they go with the story, because it's putting her in a corner, and I'm actually surprised that the story has gone this route, because like I've mentioned a few times, they just put Harmony on contract at the end of last year, and this was not the route that I thought that they were going to go with the character at all, and this really puts her in a corner, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with her next. She's murdered 2 people already. Mind you, look at all the things that Peter got away with for 5 whole freaking years. We're probably stuck with her for another 10. But I'm actually okay with it though, because the actress that plays Harmony is killing the material, and you can actually feel sympathy for her. You kind of get why she's doing the things that she's doing. I think Harmony is a much more compelling character than Peter August ever was. So I don't see her as this like serial killer. I see her as a desperate woman in a desperate situation. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. And on that note, I'm gonna end the video here so I can edit it for y'all and get it out. I'm so sorry again that it's up so late tonight, guys. But this Wednesday, I am back with a live stream. We will watch some classic clips, but I think it's gonna more so be a hangout session to catch you guys up and catch up with you guys, because obviously we don't get to talk much on these Sunday chats, because we're kind of talking about the show. But now we'll be able to hang out and catch up on each other's lives and see what we've all been up to this month. So stay tuned for that, and if you liked this video here, give it a big old thumbs up, subscribe if you want to, and I will catch you guys next time. Peace out.